the last time we saw Peter Parker. He decided to sign with Rutgers, where he went on to have a spectacular season. Spider-Man had established himself as one of the most dominant players in all of college football. I mean, with his spider sense, he was pretty much able to catch everything. And his season would get even crazier when one day he was taken over by a symbiote, and somehow he had played even better. Peter Parker would go on to receive for over 2,000 yards and earn himself a Heisman trophy, becoming the #1 player in the country by the end of his freshman season, which was around the same time that he realized that his black suit came with some negative side effects. So he decided to rip it off so he can go back to being Spider-Man the way that he wanted to be. Which brings us to today, where Peter Parker has some decisions to make on his college future. So after taking some time to think about it in the offseason, he realized that he did not have a very good team here at Rutgers, and preferably he'd like to be closer to home, so he decided that he was going to enter the transfer portal, where unfortunately there was only a couple options and none of them were amazing, but there was one that he felt like at least had a good enough team to be competitive. So ultimately for Peter Parker's sophomore season, he decided to sign with the Syracuse Orange. And now that Peter Parker is a member of the Orange, he has to pick a new number, but they do not have 15 and they don't have number 2. But Syracuse actually left a specific number open because they wanted him to wear number 1. It was fitting since he was the #1 player in the country, and the Orange wanted him to feel right at home with his new team. But it turns out Syracuse would not be the only team Spider-Man was joining, because in the offseason he had met this guy named Tony Stark, who had allowed him to start working with the Avengers. Now, he wasn't a full-time team member quite yet, but one day he was going to get there. But as far as his football team, he was ready to be a leader, and he felt pretty good about the squad going into the season. I mean, they had a good running back, they had some fast receivers, and he knew that based on how the offense was moving at practice that they might have a chance to put up a lot of points this year. The only thing was that Peter was still going to have to find a way to balance football with being Spider-Man. His roommate wanted him to take his dog out to Central Park, so Peter had decided to get that done real quick, but it turns out that he had missed his team's plane, so dang man, Peter had to swing all the way out to his first game of the season, which happened to be on the road against one of the best teams in the Big Ten, the Penn State Nittany Lions. Now on his first play as a member of Syracuse, Peter Parker had decided to say, the Heisman Trophy winner Peter Parker was getting this season started hot, and it turns out that this catch was only just the beginning. Because at this point in the first quarter, Peter already has 4 catches for 50 yards, and his 5th one would go for a touchdown. He was making a statement here on Syracuse's opening drive of the season. The only question is, would the team be able to maintain this momentum on the road, and the answer for now is no, because they would find themselves down by 7 by the time the second quarter came around. And speaking of quarters, their quarterback would throw a pick, one that got returned all the way to the house to put Penn State up by 2 possessions. Now by the end of the second quarter, Peter was helping his team fight back as he scored a touchdown, his second one of the day, to get his team within a possession, and then he would come up with another catch that brought his team into field goal range, allowing the Orange to put this one at 17-21 before they went to half. Bringing us here to the third quarter, where Peter Parker was working himself open, and he came up with a catch. Peter Parker was outrunning this Penn State defense for a touchdown, his 3rd one of the day. And at this point, Peter is so hyped that he's out here showing off some of his Spider-Man moves. Unfortunately, though, by the 4th quarter, Syracuse would find themselves back down. But it didn't seem like it would be like that for long after Peter Parker comes up with a catch, and he's breaking off tackles to bring his team into scoring range. They have a chance to go down the field and come up with a touchdown, but the quarterback throws a pick. And at this point, it seems like this game is definitely over, but somehow it ends up in overtime. And not only that, Penn State was only able to score a field goal, which means that all Peter Parker had to do was just come out here and make another catch for a score, and he would be helping his team come up with the win on the road in their first game of the season. Syracuse takes down Penn State in overtime, and this was actually one of the biggest upsets of the week. And a lot of people were praising the help of Peter Parker as he had a spectacular performance. He went on to break some records after he had 20 receptions, 386 yards, and 4 touchdowns. But if people thought that this was a good game from Peter, then yeah, he feels like he might have an even better performance in his next one, which will be his first game at home as a member of the Orange, where they are now set to face off against FCS Southeast. So, we are here in the first quarter of this game, and Peter Parker is already coming up with a touchdown. And it wasn't long after that he realized that this might be an extremely easy game, because he wasn't even out of the first quarter yet when he had over 100 yards and came up with his 2nd touchdown of the day. But if you thought he was done, then you'd be crazy, because by the end of the first half, he already had over 250 yards and now was getting his 3rd touchdown. I mean, it seems like the only time they can stop Peter is after he gets to the end zone, because he still wasn't even out of the first half yet when he got wide open up the seam and he was outrunning his defense for his 4th score of the half. Peter Parker already had 15 receptions, 300 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Yet he would still have a chance to add to it as Syracuse gets the ball again before half, and Peter gets his 5th touchdown of the day. He is frying these boys. Somebody send help. By the start of the second half, this game was pretty much already out of reach. But just in case it wasn't, Peter had to come out here and say, "Mwah." And even though Spider-Man is playing against one of the worst teams in all of college football, man, even he can't believe it. He is having a historical afternoon, one that would help his team come up with a dominant 49-10 victory. The Orange absolutely decimated their opponent, and it was definitely thanks to Peter Parker, New York's newest hero. He put up 21 receptions and 360 yards in a dominating win. He just casually has the best receiving game of all time, which had Peter in a pretty good mood. And that made it easier to forgive his best friend Harry for kissing his girlfriend, because Peter would find out that Norman Osborn would give Harry a goblin serum as he was trying to help Harry fight off a degenerative disease that he had. So unfortunately, Harry was still sick, but Peter was going to be there for him. And when he wasn't there for him, he would be locked in, ready to head into his next game. Peter Parker was back in New York for another game on the season, and he was ready to put up another big-time performance at home against Tulsa. Now, by the end of the first quarter, Peter would already have 5 receptions for 40 yards, but his 6th one would be a one-handed snag that he plucked out of the air for a touchdown. Peter Parker was starting this game off right as he helped his team tie it up at 7. But it wasn't just Peter out here making plays, because for the first time in his college career, he has some other players stepping up. As a receiver catches the touchdown that puts Syracuse up before they get the ball back before half, leading to a play where Peter's just trying to stretch the field, but his quarterback gives him a chance, and he snags this pass out the air. Peter Parker was dominating another game as he already had over 150 yards before half. But it didn't seem like Peter had any intentions of stopping as he got to the third quarter, and he would come up with another one-handed catch for a touchdown. Peter Parker was eviscerating this defense. And honestly, he was starting to get a little bit mad that they weren't giving him more of a challenge. It was all good though, man, because by the fourth quarter, Peter would catch another touchdown. And at this point, he wasn't even excited anymore, man. He was just happy that he helped his team secure another W, as they take care of Tulsa 35-10 thanks to a 245 receiving yard game from Peter. He was already winning his 3rd National Offensive Player of the Week, and it looks like he could potentially run it back for another Heisman. He had more receiving yards than anybody else in the country, and the next closest guy had 300 less yards with 2 more games played. Yeah, Peter Parker was a problem for opposing defenses, but I can tell you guys right now, he is also a problem for anybody that's trying to cause problems in New York. Peter Parker had to take out some of these bad guys, and thanks to some new tech that Tony Stark had given him, he was having a lot of fun doing it. One thing that Peter certainly loved to do was protect this city, but he also loved playing for this city too. And he cannot wait to hop into his next game, as it would be another one at home, with Syracuse now set to face off against Pittsburgh. Now Peter has started off this game playing from the slot, and he had done a great job working across field and coming up with a reception that brings his team within the 20-yard line. But it wouldn't be long after where Peter would realize that he was playing against a much better team than he had faced the previous weeks. Because after his quarterback throws a pick, Syracuse is all of a sudden down by 14. And now at the end of half, Peter's going to have to find a way to help them get back in this game. And this catch right here is going to get them started. They have a great opportunity here to put up some points, and it seems like they have a nice little play going, but this receiver fumbles the ball, and Pittsburgh picks it up. Now thankfully this would not turn into any points for Pittsburgh, and Syracuse would score some points before the end of half, bringing us here to the second half where Peter would finally come up with the touchdown. He cuts this deficit down to 1 possession before Pittsburgh would extend it in the fourth quarter. And at this point, Peter's just trying to do everything he can to make a play, but he was trying too much, as him calling for the ball caused his quarterback to throw a pick, resulting in 23rd ranked Syracuse taking their first loss of the season. The Orange dropped to 3-1 on the year, even with another great performance from Peter Parker. I mean, they are only 4 games in, and Peter has already set the single season record for touchdowns at Syracuse. He couldn't really be playing much better after he earns another Offensive Player of the Week, but he knew there was definitely some things that he could be working on, including getting himself a new Spidey suit. He wanted something that resembled a little bit closer to his team's colors, just so he could feel a little bit more like Spider-Man when he was on the field. And going forward throughout the year, he could not wait to show the country that Syracuse deserved to be back in the top 25, and that they had potential to compete for a national championship. Now, it wasn't long into this game's opening possession where Peter was making an impact by coming up with a one-handed snag on the sideline. Spider-Man was starting this game off right and setting the tone for his team, because by the fourth quarter, they stayed very close in this one. And when they needed it most, it was actually one of Peter's teammates who came up with the catch and brought the team all the way towards the goal line for a touchdown, putting up a score that would go on to help Syracuse win this game. Peter had another 100-plus yard day, and he was excited about getting his first NIL deal of the season.
Pizza time.
But Peter was also excited that Syracuse was back to being a top 25 ranked team, and they had a chance to continue to prove that they belong as they head on the road against Virginia Tech. Now Syracuse came out here in a game against a winless team firing on all cylinders. Peter Parker came up with a touchdown to set the tone for his team, and it seems like they got the message here in the second quarter as their star running back comes up with a big play that brings the team across the goal line for a touchdown, putting them up by 2 possessions. Now by the fourth quarter they are only up by 8, but they have some plans to change that. They run a pop pass to Peter Parker before he breaks off a tackle, and now Peter has a bunch of room down the sideline. Peter just glides his way to the end zone to put his team up by 2 possessions in the fourth quarter, getting himself another touchdown on the season and his team another win on the year. Syracuse takes down an ACC opponent 21-6. And at this point, with Syracuse on a roll, Peter feels great going forward throughout the year. But it turns out he wasn't the only one feeling great because his best friend Harry was doing a lot better. He told Peter that his dad gave him some black substance that helped him completely heal. So Peter was definitely happy for his best friend Harry, but he was even more happy to get into his next game, where Syracuse was heading into another ACC battle on the road against Stanford. Now at this point in his career, no matter where Peter is lined up, he is always making an impact, and this game was no different. He came up with a touchdown at the end of half to put his team up by 1 possession, but this actually turned out to be a game where Peter did not have to do too much, because his teammates were showing up big against their conference opponent. A receiver came up with a touchdown to give Syracuse the lead back at the end of the third, bringing us to the end of the fourth quarter where the Orange found themselves in field goal range, but their running back was coming up with a play just to make sure that they were in better position, ultimately resulting in Syracuse holding on for a 24-21 victory. In this game particularly, they can thank Tyshawn Russell, who went for over 100 yards and a touchdown. But over the course of the season, yeah buddy, New York has been showing all sorts of love to the one and only Peter Parker. Now it wasn't Peter's goal to receive a bunch of love and adoration, but he definitely appreciates what he means to his city as a superhero and as a football player. But the job for Syracuse is still nowhere near done yet, because they have to find a way to keep their win streak alive heading on the road against Louisville. Now Syracuse started this game out with great field position, and Peter was trying to take advantage of it by snagging his ball at the air with one hand. This was enough to have his team hyped up all throughout this game, because by the end of the first half, tied at 7, Peter would come up with a touchdown that puts his team back on top. But despite Peter playing well so far, it was not that good of a game as he usually has. So he knew that when he got another opportunity, he would have to break off this tackle. Oh yeah, there's nobody gonna catch him. He's getting to the end zone for his second score of the day that puts his team up by 2 possessions before Louisville would eventually take the lead by the fourth quarter. Thankfully though, Louisville does not have Peter Parker, because with less than 20 seconds left in this game when they needed it most, Peter came up with a touchdown for Syracuse, putting them ahead in this game in the final moments and doing enough to secure them another win on the season. And at this point, y'all, this team seems completely unstoppable. It was almost quite literally impossible to guard Peter, as he was just pretty much able to catch anything on the field. But when he was off the field, he was also able to make an impact as well. Because sometimes Peter would have to really come out here and knock some sense into people by saying, "Wang." Oh yeah, Peter not playing around with these boys, man. He just got the suit. He ain't letting nobody touch it. He was out here teaching these boys a lesson, and he was using that Tony Stark technology to do so. He was still looking forward to one day becoming an official member of the Avengers, but that could wait for now as he was super focused on finishing off the season strong for Syracuse. They potentially have a chance to get themselves in the college football playoffs. But it all continues here as they lock in for their next game on the road against UConn. Now this was another game where early on, Peter wanted to set the tone for his team. So that's why as soon as he got the opportunity to, he was gonna break off some tackles, and Peter Parker was gone. He was outrunning this entire UConn squad for a touchdown to set the tone for his team. But even Peter didn't realize that he was only just getting started, because the next opportunity Peter had to make some plays, he would get himself open over the top and come up with a catch before breaking off a couple more tackles, and he was gone again. Peter is heading back to the end zone for another touchdown to put his team up by 14. But if you thought Peter was done right there, then yeah buddy, you're crazy, because the very next drive, Peter was coming up with another big play. He was on his way to the end zone for his 3rd touchdown. And at this point, he understands that he's playing against UConn, but he still can't believe that he's really doing it like this, especially when there is literally less than 10 seconds left in the half. So Syracuse decided to take a shot deep to Peter, which he caught, and somehow he was able to get past the defense for another touchdown. Peter Parker is going absolutely crazy in this game. He has 300 yards, and it's not even the end of the first half. And by the time the second half did come, for some reason UConn thought it was a good idea to press Peter Parker, and he was easily getting by this defender for another big play. Man, what is going on? I'm trying to see who this number 12 guy is who's defending Peter, because this is great, but we can't can't even see it. Either way, it seems pretty obvious that it's not a good idea for him to be pressing up on Peter, but his coach puts him in another bad position, and Peter Parker was coming up with another catch at the end of the third quarter that gets him across the goal line for a touchdown. This is insane. Syracuse has over 40 points and Peter Parker has over 400 yards by the end of the third quarter, doing way more than enough to give his team a blowout victory on the road. And despite the fact that Peter was out here breaking records and was obviously the reason why they win, he was giving a lot of credit to his team and the media like a true leader would. Peter had his team in great position at the end of the year because of plays like this one. He was an absolute freak of nature, and it seems like whenever it mattered most, he was coming up with big plays like he was here against Georgia Tech, bringing his team into scoring range in the final moments of the game, and after he comes out, they somehow score a touchdown to pull off the W. Syracuse's success would continue into a game against Florida State where Peter came up with a catch for a touchdown that put him over 100 yards before half, all while helping his team move to 10-1 on the season heading into his final game of the year. But just because the Orange was now a top 10 team in the country, it did not mean that Peter could abandon his responsibilities as Spider-Man. And it turns out that one of his good friends, Miles Morales, was also playing college football as well, and he even got a suit to match his new team's colors too. But now heading into the final game of the regular season, Peter was ready to lock in and try and help his team finish the year 11-1. But the only thing stopping them from doing so is a fellow ACC opponent, Boston College. Now Boston College was playing off coverage hoping that Peter wouldn't beat them over the top, but instead he just caught the slant before breaking off some tackles, and just like that Peter looked like he was out of there. But then I don't know who this dude number 2 is, but he was a lot faster than Peter thought, and he ends up tracking him down from behind. Either way, he had set his team up with a chance to score some points, and they did after they are now up 14-7 in the second half. Bringing us to the third quarter where Peter wanted to keep the momentum going for his team by saying "excuse me" and coming up with a play that brings his team well into scoring range. He had them on a drive that took up a bunch of clock in the fourth quarter, and after they got down to the goal line and allowed the running back to get across for a touchdown, Syracuse had done enough to finish off one of their best regular seasons in program history. The Orange finish off the season 11-1, and heading into the postseason, they are now actually the third-ranked team in the country, and it looks like they're going to have a bye week for the college football playoffs. This really could not have been a better year for Peter, as he improved greatly on his own performance, going for over 2,500 yards on the year and earning himself another Heisman trophy, becoming the only player since Archie Griffin in 1975 to ever do so. At this point, Peter is easily considered to be the greatest receiver of all time, but unfortunately, he might have to become one of the greatest superheroes of all time if he wants to stop what's happening next. Because it turns out that Harry would be consumed by the same symbiote that got Peter last season, and he looked like he was about to cause some serious danger to the city, man, so Peter had to stop him. But oh no, Harry had become a monster named Venom, and he was taking over the entire city with this symbiote. Yeah guys, this is definitely not good, and Peter's gonna have to take care of this. But it's gonna have to wait because he has a playoff football game, baby. The Syracuse Orange are heading into their first ever matchup in the college football playoffs, and for a chance to move on to the next round, they will have to take down the Clemson Tigers. Now early on against one of the best teams in the ACC, Peter was doing a great job making a play on his first reception before getting downfield and saying hey, moving his team across the 50. Now this drive would actually end up resulting in an interception, but with Clemson not doing anything with the ball, Syracuse would find themselves right back in the same spot, leading to a 3rd down and 10 where Peter came up with the catch over the middle for a touchdown. He's putting up the first points of the game in the playoffs, and it looks like the Orange have all the momentum before Clemson would take the lead in the second half. Bringing us to a 1st and 10 where Peter ran a motion across the field, and after cutting up, he was able to get himself open, and he was coming up with a catch that brings his team well into scoring range. And it would only be a few plays later where Peter would cap off this drive with a touchdown. He helped his team regain the lead before Clemson would take it right back. And now Syracuse is in a tough position as they have to come up with a play to get them in scoring range, but this was definitely not doing the job. But Peter knew that with his team relying on him, he had to make something happen. So after Clemson left him booty butt cheeks wide open, Peter was out here coming up with a catch, and he was outrunning this safety for a touchdown. Peter Parker helped Syracuse take the lead in the final minute of this game, scoring some points at the end of this one that helps the Orange get to the next round of the playoffs. Peter Parker comes up clutch in the final moments to help his team move on. They were headed to the next round of the playoffs, and the crazy thing about it is that there was actually 5 ACC teams that made the playoffs. I didn't even notice that. But something that Peter noticed was that he now had a chance to help his team get to the national championship. The only thing is that they were about to play in the toughest game that they've had all season. And for the right to compete for a championship, they will have to take down the number 2 team in the country, the Georgia Bulldogs. Now this game started out great for Syracuse because they somehow came up with a touchdown and they already had the lead before the offense took the field. But early on it seemed like it might be a little bit of a rough day for Georgia as they were allowing Peter Parker to come up with some crazy plays. Somehow he catches this pass off the tip and picks up a first down, bringing us to the second quarter where Peter is in the slot and he realizes that the guy who's guarding him is definitely a mismatch. He just glides right past him for an easy touchdown to put Syracuse up by multiple possessions. And all of a sudden Syracuse has a bunch of momentum in this game after getting the ball back up still by 2 scores, and they had a nice opportunity to add to the lead after Peter gets wide open and he is coming up with a catch with nobody around him as he dives across the goal line for a score. Peter Parker is getting it done in the first half against Georgia, helping his team take a 3-score lead before Georgia would cut it down to just 1 possession in the third quarter. But just because Georgia's offense came alive, it does not mean their defense is doing any better. They keep leaving Peter Parker wide open, and he's making the Bulldogs pay as he gets them down to the goal line, and on the second down, he comes up with another score, making a play that puts the Orange back up by 2 possessions in the second half, and it turns out that this was already enough to send them to the national championship. The Syracuse Orange were going somewhere that they've never been in their school history. And soon, it would be time for Peter Parker to lock in for the final game of the year. He had already won 2 Heismans for his Uncle Ben, but now he has the chance to do something even greater. He's going to do everything he can to help his team make history, as in the national championship, they will be set to face off against the Michigan Wolverines. Now, I'm not gonna lie, early on in this game, Michigan was clamping up Peter Parker, and Syracuse was lucky that this wasn't picked off. By the second quarter, Syracuse was down a possession, and Peter only had 1 catch for 7 yards. So they tried to take a shot deep to him to get him going, but that did not work out. Eventually, Peter would start getting involved in this game as he came up with a catch that brought his team into scoring range, bringing us to a 1st and goal where the Orange have a chance to tie this game up, and they do after Peter catches a touchdown. This one is tied up at 7 apiece before Michigan takes the lead back before half. And with this team not wanting to fall too far behind in this game, they needed somebody to make a play, and this receiver was the one to do it. He breaks off a tackle before getting completely open, and he is just racing his way towards the end zone for a score. Unfortunately, the field goal kicker would actually miss the kick, and Syracuse was down by 1 point after halftime. But thanks to Peter Parker, who was doing a great job manipulating this defense and getting open in the zones, he had them back across midfield, bringing us to a play where Peter's spidey senses were tingling, and he felt like he had a chance to make something happen. Because with this defense giving him cushion, he had room to come up with a catch before breaking off a tackle, and now he's in a foot race with the safety and beats him to the end zone for a touchdown. Peter Parker was coming up with an incredible play that puts his team back up in the national championship, bringing us here to the 4th quarter where Michigan was only able to score 3. And with them only having 1 timeout, Syracuse is trying their best to keep the clock moving, and they're doing a great job of doing so as they move this game to under 2 minutes, eventually getting to a situation where all they need is just 1 more first down, and Peter gets him to a 3rd and inches. This could be the game right here, but instead of giving it to Peter Parker, they're going to give it to their star running back, who reaches across for a first down. Syracuse moves the chains with the #1 team in the country having no timeouts, and the Orange have done enough to earn themselves their first ever national championship. The Syracuse Orange are winning a championship for the first time in program history. They had dominated bad teams all year and proved that they belong against the best ones. And thanks to Peter Parker, who is most likely now the greatest receiver in the history of college football, they are on top of the college football world. But unfortunately, it looks like there might be no world to be on top of if Peter doesn't find a way to stop Venom. He is out here trying to destroy everything right now. I mean, he's even ripping apart the Midtown High football field. Hey, come on, Harry, this is where Peter earned his scholarships. Oh yeah, Peter was pretty mad about this, so he busted out some technology that Tony Stark gave him, and he started hitting Venom with that mwang, 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 mwang. Eventually, though, Peter realized that there was only going to be one way to stop Venom, and Harry had realized it too. So when the right time came, Peter knew that he had to stop Harry's heart, and although this would save the entire world, unfortunately this resulted in Peter having to end the life of his best friend. But everything was all good though when Miles would shock him back to life. So now Peter would be able to keep his best friend, protect this city, and be the winner of a national championship. Peter Parker had the greatest season in the history of college football. 165 receptions, over 3,000 yards, and 37 touchdowns. He went on to break multiple national season, game, and career records, easily establishing himself as one of, if not the greatest college football player of all time, after only playing for just 2 years. And although he had actually already accomplished what his Uncle Ben wanted him to, Peter still felt like he wanted more out of his football career. So he is thinking about potentially transferring to another school, running it back with Syracuse, or potentially taking the next year off to prepare for the NFL draft. So Spider-Man definitely has some decisions to make, but I'll leave that decision up to you guys. If you want to see a part 3 of Peter Parker, be sure to get this video to 1,000 likes and subscribe to the channel down below. Also be sure to comment down below who else you guys want to see next, and YouTube thinks you'll like one of these other stories until the next one comes out. If you got to this point in the video, just know that I appreciate you more than you'll ever know. Shout out to Ryan World for the comment. I love that you did this, bro. I love that I do it too. And also shout out to I'm a Loser 09. Hey, you're not a loser, but shout out to you, bro. Underrated but a good YouTuber. I appreciate that. I agree. I actually just recently hit 35,000 subscribers, and I appreciate all of you guys very much, which is why I say it at the end of every video. You guys are the reason that I'm able to do this, and I will keep doing it for as long as I can. So once again, I appreciate you guys, and other than that, I'm gonna catch you guys next time.